The Du Bois Black Music Project proudly presents the Cats Talk Back, mini concerts and panel discussions on the hot topics in jazz. The legendary Reggie Workman, Charles McPherson, Steve Coleman, J.D. Allen, Nasheet Waits, Eric Revis, Antoine Drye, and others take on issues of cultural appropriation, race, power, and representation in jazz. This series features concerts from the most cutting-edge musicians on the jazz scene today, including the Donald Edwards Quintet, the Anthony Wonsey Trio, Nasheet Waits and Blood Brothers. Produced and moderated by jazz vocalist and ethnomusicologist Maya Cunningham. The Cats Talk Back is the inaugural event series of the Du Bois Black Music Project, brought to you by the W.E.B. Du Bois Department of Afro-American Studies, UMass Amherst, in partnership with We Insist and the We Up, Re-Up online jazz festival. Tune in for our live stream Friday, April 23rd, April 30th, and May 7th. For more details, visit www.duboisdepartmentblackmusicproject.org. Well, welcome. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for folks who are joining us from the UMass Amherst community, from the United States, around the world. We welcome you. Thank you very much. Welcome to Fire Fridays, the Cats Talk Back, mini concerts and panel discussions that put Black music culture bearers in conversations with hot topics in jazz. My name is Maya Cunningham, and I'm an ethnomusicologist, a jazz vocalist, and I will be our moderator for the evening. This evening, our live broadcast of Fire Fridays, the Cats Talk Back series, is the finale of the spring 2021 inaugural season of the Du Bois Black Music Project. Once again, we are pleased to partner with the We Insist Artist Collective and the We Up, Re-Up online jazz festival to present this series. So now we just want to share a little more for those of you who are just joining us, and those of you who have been with us, you've heard a little bit of this before, but bear with us. For the newcomers, the W.E.B. Du Bois Department of Afro-American Studies is pleased to use the Du Bois Black Music Project to continue the work of legacy faculty like Max Roach, Yusef Lateef, Archie Shepp, Billy Taylor, Horace Boyer, and the prolific Mr. Reggie Workman, who is with us this evening. Like all of these peers, or all of his peers, I'm talking about Max Roach, who are on faculty. Throughout his time on faculty, Max Roach made outstanding contributions to jazz scholarship through his time in the department, and he engaged his scholarship to address major issues of race, power, cultural appropriation, and identity in Black music with a focus on jazz. And I must also parenthetically say that people like Max Roach, Archie Shepp, and many of our guests today and other musicians do not use the term jazz, but instead refer to the music as Black American music or Black classical music or other variations along those lines. Standing on his shoulders and the shoulders of our legacy faculty, we want to focus today on the subject of cultural appropriation. And this is not only a hot topic in jazz, but a sensitive one, because the issue is entangled within and propagated by the racial hierarchies of the United States. So let me give you a salient definition for those who might not know. Cultural appropriation is the adoption of an element or elements of one culture or identity by members of another culture or identity. This can be controversial or extremely problematic when members of a dominant culture appropriate from minority cultures, or rather members of a power culture or a power elite appropriate from those who have been historically disempowered. This subject cannot be ignored or regarded as taboo. It must be dealt with head on because the cultural appropriation of jazz and any other Black music is damaging to African Americans writ large. For those who don't know, the engagement with, appreciation of, and practice of jazz has almost been completely removed from the African American community that birthed the music. Today, we will use excuse me, I'm just all over the place, y'all. Forgive me. Stay with me, though. Stay with me. Today, we will use the analytical framework of ethnomusicology and the lens of Africana studies to understand and explore this issue. Because of our deep concern concerning the cultural appropriation of jazz, we feel compelled to use this platform to hear from jazz culture bearers like Reggie Workman, like Steve Coleman, J.D. Allen, Eric Revis, and Nasheet Waits to address this issue and define solutions. So stay engaged with us, and to continue engaged in this work, please visit our websites to share your contact information: Du Bois Department, blackmusicproject.org, weinsist.org, and we'll share other websites as we continue. A special thank you to all who have supported this event, including Adina and Mark Levin, Kim Smith, John Webster, and thank you to WPFW 89.3 Jazz and Justice Radio in Washington, D.C. Now we'll hear a special welcome from Dr. James Smethurst, Interim Chair of the W.E.B. Du Bois Department of Afro-American Studies, UMass Amherst.
Thank you, Maya. I just wanted, on behalf of the Du Bois Department, I want to welcome you all to the final session of the Cats Talk Back. We're so proud and happy to be able to help Maya organize this event. It really, bringing back, renewing and continuing the tradition of great Black music, both its performance, but also its study, its analysis at the University of Massachusetts Amherst, the tradition of people like Max Roach, Archie Shepp, Billy Taylor, Yusef Lateef, Reggie Workman, Fred Tillis, and Horace Boyer. Before I stop, I'd also like to thank some of the other people. Oh, first of all, I want to thank Maya Cunningham. Without Maya and her work, both her tireless energy, but also her savvy, this wouldn't have happened. So thank you, Maya. We're so proud of this event. I also wanted to thank Chancellor Subaswamy of the University of Massachusetts Amherst for the support of these events. Without his support, we wouldn't have been able to do it. Also want to thank Dean Barbara Krauthammer of the College of Humanities and Fine Arts, Sal Macchia, and the Department of Music. Again, I'm hoping that this is the beginning of a fruitful renewal, again, of a fruitful cooperation between music and Afro-Am to bring and study great Black music at the university. Also want to thank my colleagues in the Du Bois Department who have aided in various ways, especially John Bracey and Yemisi Jamo. Finally, I want to thank Radiance Flowers, who had helped with many of the sort of behind the scenes with many of the clerical kind of organizational things. Okay, without further ado, just thanks a lot and enjoy this.
Thank you, Dr. Smethurst. Well, so we are here at the final final event date of the Cats Talk Back, and we like to introduce a band. Some of the most cutting-edge musicians on the New York jazz scene. I would like to introduce Blood Brothers featuring Nasheet Waits on drums, Abraham Burton on tenor saxophone, Marvin Sewell on guitar, and I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, brother, Lucas Curtis on bass. Please enjoy Blood Brothers, courtesy of the We Up, Re-Up online.
We Up, Re-Up Virtual Festival.
Thank you so much out there in the virtual world. Please welcome Lucas Curtis on the bass. Woo! Woo! Marvin Sewell on the guitar. My brother Abraham Burton on the tenor saxophone. Myself, Nasheet Waits on the drums. Blood Brothers is the denomination that we're dealing with up here. There's a story that goes along with that too. A brief one. We'll just tell a brief story. You know, me and Abraham used to run the streets of New York City when it was still New York City. It was rough and tough back then. And as it being rough and tough, we were horse playing around one day, and I cut myself by accident. And I was bleeding, and I was like, this is a perfect opportunity for us to be blood brothers. I said, now you just have to cut yourself. And he was like, yo, stop playing around. So I was messing around. I think I had like a knife or something. This is like back when we used to carry knives and stuff like that. Right. And I had one out, and we were messing around, and I accidentally cut him, and I was like, okay, that was the opportunity. So we actually are related, just in case he wins the lottery or something. I'm entitled to some of that. But if he owes you any money, don't call me. That's strictly Burton business. We started out the evening with a selection by Jimmy Merritt entitled Angela, from a wonderful record, Lee Morgan's last recording actually. One of Abraham and my favorite recordings, and Jimmy Merritt, bass player Lucas, just was all over that. He's a Jimmy Merritt fan, we all are. And then we segued into a song of mine entitled Moonchild. We're going to conclude the offering with Abraham's composition entitled Truth. Thank you very much.
So that was absolutely beautiful. Thank you, Nasheet and Blood Brothers. Abraham Burton on tenor sax, Marvin Sewell, oh, beautiful, on guitar, Luquez Curtis on bass. Thank you. Okay, so once again, my name is Maya Cunningham. I am an ethnomusicologist and doctoral student in the W.E.B. Du Bois Department of Afro-American Studies and producer of the Du Bois Black Music Project. And I should also add that I am a cultural activist, which is why I put this event together. Our panel topic today is Jazz, Race, and Power, Historical and Contemporary Coloniality and Cultural Appropriation. And as I shared before, this is a sensitive topic, especially amongst jazz practitioners who are from all backgrounds, because it is about issues of race, class, and racial hierarchy here in the United States, or I should say perhaps the colonial structure of the United States that has historically relegated Euro-Americans on top and hegemonic power positions, and African Americans and others at the bottom. Please note that this discussion is not about who can or cannot play jazz. We're not policing who can be a part of the music or take part of the music. But we are having this discussion in recognition of the inescapable positionalities of African Americans, Euro Americans, and other non-Black people in the US, which is undeniably a race state, and how those positionalities intersect with the music. Jazz has been a target of the US colonial project since it was born in the early 20th century. Perhaps Langston Hughes elucidates the reason behind this when he drives home the connection between jazz and African American identity in his essay, The Negro Artist and the Racial Mountain, which he wrote in 1926. He states, quote, "But jazz, to me, is one of the inherent expressions of Negro life in America," end quote. If jazz is an expression of African American identity, then the cultural appropriation and historic minstrelsy targeting the music is a colonial assault on that identity. Historically, since slavery times, the modus operandi of the US colonial project has been about the theft of Black labor. And I want to show a slide because I want us to put this, before we go into our discussion, put this in conversation with Black studies and with ethnomusicology, some other considerations. And so I want to share my screen to share the definition of settler colonialism. Okay, and I'm just going to share here, and I'm going to put this here, and I'm going to trust, and our tech director, please call me or text me if I'm not able to be heard, but or if I'm not seen, but I'm going to trust that I'm sharing. So settler colonialism, the United States is a settler colony. And settler colonialism is the biopolitical and geopolitical management of people, land, flora, fauna within the domestic borders of an imperial nation. It involves particularized modes of control, prisons, ghettos, minoritizing, schooling, policing, to ensure the ascendancy of a nation and its white elite. These modes of operation or control, or the modus operandi, includes imprisonment and involuntary transport of human beings across borders, ghettos, their policing, economic divestiture. All of these things are strategies of internal colonialism, segregation, surveillance, criminalization. All of these things are a part of that. And so we cannot consider, I'm just going to stop sharing. Let's see. Okay. So we can't consider this issue of cultural appropriation in the music without that definition. Since slavery times, the United States, the settler colonial project of the United States, has involved not only the theft of Afro-descendants' physical labor, but also the theft of intellectual prowess and cultural productions. Cultural appropriation is, as I stated before, the adoption of elements or co-opting, perhaps, of elements of one culture by or identity by members of another culture or identity. This can be controversial, deeply problematic, dangerous, harmful, when members of a dominant culture appropriate from minority cultures. Quilts made by enslaved African American women were credited to white women slave owners. The banjo, the hallmark instrument of African America during slavery times that originated in Africa, is now almost entirely associated with and often claimed by Euro Americans. More could be said about the identity colonialism and the demeaning misrepresentation of Blackface minstrelsy that has defined U.S. popular culture since the 1800s. It should be no surprise then that the original Dixieland Jazz Band recorded a minstrel imitation of the early 20th century Black music of New Orleans. The inclusion of the word original in the band's name embodies one major form of the cultural appropriation imposed upon jazz. That is, Euro-American claims of origination of the music and contesting the music as a Black creation. Cultural appropriation is not mere imitation or not about mere imitation. It is about power. Hugh Masekela said that the white South Africans in South Africa, that the fact that that white power structure still controls the Black music industry is a form of financial or economic apartheid. Considering that very few Black music culture bearers hold positions of power in the jazz industry, the same could be said of the jazz industry. What historically happened in jazz in terms of Euro-American economic control of Black music productions, or what has happened in the contemporary in terms of the minoritizing of Black musicians in the music, and even the whitening of the music, is simply reflective of the US colonial order. One of our discussion points today is to understand how a music that, according to Langston Hughes, is an inherent expression of African American life in America has come to almost exclude its Black culture bearers. Somehow, Black people have been systematically removed from the music by print media, polls, performing arts institutions, record companies, higher learning institutions, and certain quarters of jazz radio that have acted, and these are my words, as imperialist structures to remove the music from the African American community. This is not a discussion about whether non-Blacks are or can be good jazz musicians. Again, this is about the inescapable positionalities of African American and non-African Americans within the US colonial order. And I just want to share my screen one more time because let's all be clear and on the same page about what that colonial order is, particularly when the colonial order is often obscured by the rhetoric of the US, the land of the free, the home of the brave, and all of that. So I'm just going to share my screen again. I'm going to share the full thing. Hopefully it can be seen. So in our discussion, let's consider these anthropological terms: culture bearer, cultural insider, Haffy, which is both insider and outsider of a culture or cultural music for a different reason, cultural outsider. Let us continue to consider these words: emic, right? The insider view, which we'll hear today from our guests, and the etic view, an outsider view. And then let's consider these terms in concerning the US colonial order, where in truth, the culture bearers of jazz, or even cultural insiders, are colonial subjects. And sometimes, often, as we've seen during slavery and continuing, the cultural productions of jazz culture bearers, of Black music culture bearers, is treated as colonial property of colonial citizens or beneficiaries and colonial rulers. These are some terms I'd like us to consider. I'm going to stop sharing and close out this meditation. This is a framework, that colonial structure, that ultimately determines who controls the business of and gains the most economically from the music, historically and in the contemporary. Somehow, Black people, as I stated before, have been systematically removed from the music. And by these imperial structures that I mentioned, or structures that act as imperial structures, I should say. And so, therefore, let us begin with this opening statement. I problematize the fact that the jazz industry has few or no Black people that control it. There's little Black presence, control, or ownership of record labels that produce jazz recordings these days, performance venues that present the music, publications that write about the music, those who teach the music, or who create curricular products concerning the music. How did this happen? There's much more to this story about how this all unfolded. The jazz culture bearers that we have with us today are of the highest caliber, and indeed, musicians like Mr. Reggie Workman. He is a creator of this music, a culture bearer to the maximum, and responsible for major innovations that moved it forward. Our panelists today will shed light on the cultural appropriation of jazz from an insider's perspective, or an emic perspective. Our purpose today is to discuss the issue and get it on the public record in order to find solutions and to invite those who are engaging with us today in our audience to take part in the movement to bring jazz, our heritage music, back into the Black community so our young people will learn and understand our African American identity. So normally I go from, and please feel free to comment on that, those who are joining, and I hope our panelists will be able to shed light and elucidate some of these points that I just raised. Normally I go in order of elder. You know, in the African America, in I would say all Afro-descendant cultures, there's an elder system where, you know, we defer to elders and we revere elders and look to elders for wisdom and information and instruction and all of that. But today, since our elder, the eldest of our guests will be introduced last, I'd like us to start with we use a term called young bloods. Okay, so I'd like us to start with the younger. And Nasheet, I'm not sure if you're actually the youngest out of the younger crew, but anyway, I'm going to introduce you first. So Nasheet Waits, is a drummer and music educator, and he's a native of New York. His interest in playing drums was encouraged by his father, legendary percussionist Frederick Waits. Nasheet's college education began at Morehouse, where he majored in history and psychology. He later gained a degree in music from Long Island University. And he's currently teaching at the New England, tell us, Nasheet?
Oh, New England Conservatory.
At New England Conservatory. Throughout the 30-year span of his career, Waits boasts stints with some of the most notable musicians in the world, long-standing relationships with Andrew Hill, Jason Moran and the Bandwagon, Christian McBride and David Murray. Also, within the last 15 years, he's led the group Equality and co-led Tar Baby with Eric Revis and Orrin Evans. Amidst his performing, recording, and touring activity, Nasheet is also a professor at New England Conservatory. Waits stresses a personal approach to the drums and music, true to his personal philosophy of the necessity to balance tradition and modernism. Nasheet is dedicated to exploring his role and creative path in music. Nasheet, thank you so much for being with us today.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Okay, J.D. Allen, hailed by the New York Times as a tenor saxophonist with an enigmatic, elegant, and hard-driving style. J.D. Allen is a bright light on today's international jazz scene, with 14 albums as a leader to his credit. His unique and compelling voice on the instrument is the result of a patient and painstaking confrontation with the fundamentals of the art, and he's earned Allen critical attention, signaling his ascension to the upper ranks of the contemporary jazz world. He's originally from Detroit, and Allen's apprenticeship it was anchored by his lengthy tenure with Betty Carter, and it occurred largely in New York, where he worked with legends such as Lester Bowie, George Cables.
David Bowie would have been nice. That would have been cool. Go ahead, sorry.
Louis Hayes, the Frank Foster Big Band, Winnard Harper, Dave Douglas, Cindy Blackman, Butch Morris, David Murray, Wallace Roney, Rufus Reid, and Jerry Allen. Allen's most recent album, Toys Die Dreaming, on the Savant label, extends his singular and well-honed approach to the trio. His solo saxophone release, Queen City, will be released in 2021. Off the bandstand, Allen is a compelling educator and activist. He is founder of We Insist, a nonprofit jazz and Black arts action community. And those of you who want to engage with We Insist, if we can show the caption there, please sign up on the contact information, sign up on the contact page of the We Insist webpage, or we'll show the caption eventually. Thank you. There we go. And he's also founder of the sister organization, We Up, Re-Up, a collective of jazz musicians whose primary goal is to foster jazz performance, curating opportunities within non-traditional inner city and rural performance settings. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having us, Maya, and UMass. Really appreciate that.
Okay. So now I'd like to introduce Eric Revis, who's been called, quote, a fearless master of experimentation, a force of nature by Downbeat magazine. Grammy Award-winning bassist and composer Eric Revis courts a stubborn infatuation with exploration. A fixture on vibrant, evolving music scenes, he has sought commitment to honest expression throughout his career. Following an apprenticeship with Betty Carter, did y'all play with her at the same time, JD?
Yeah, we were in.
Okay.
We went through the trenches together.
All three of us are connected, actually. So we family. All of us are family.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
Following an apprenticeship with Betty Carter, Eric would enter an ongoing association with Branford Marsalis and collaborate with such distinctive voices as, y'all have to help me, Peter Brotzman, Jeff Tane Watts, Chris Davis, Jason Moran, Kurt Rosenwinkel, Abby Lincoln, Steve Coleman, Ralph Peterson, Lionel Hampton, McCoy Tyner, and Andrew Surreal. He co-founded Tar Baby alongside Orrin Evans and Nasheet Waits, as well as Options, featuring Waits and Benny Mapone. Excuse me if I've mispronounced your name.
Moppin.
Forgive me. And Lancaster, featuring Jeff Parker, Guillermo Brown, and Joshua White. Welcome, Eric. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me, Maya.
Okay, and I must say that these brothers here have deeply collaborated with me in the Du Bois Black Music Project and bringing this to fruition. So thank you all for your hard work and dedication, our long meetings. Thank you for all of your insight that you have.
Thank you. This has been a wonderful learning experience for me personally, and great conversations with you and my brothers.
Yes.
But just so you know, I'm the youngest.
Oh,
I know the hierarchy. I know it's like, just to clear that up.
Okay, youngest and pathological liar. He's the youngest and pathological liar amongst the group.
That too.
Okay. So I'll get it right next time. So Eric, Nasheet, JD.
Yeah, I'm actually working it out. I'm just.
Okay.
Not that matters, but the oldest thinking. But all right, anyway.
Okay. So we are extremely fortunate to have a giant in the music, Steve Coleman. Steve Coleman was born in Chicago. He's an alto saxophonist and composer. Moved to New York City in 1978 and has lived in the New York City area ever since. He's a leader of several groups. His main group, Steve Coleman and the Five Elements, began in 1981 and is still active today. Steve incorporates elements from the folkloric music of the African diaspora fused with musical ideas influenced by ancient metaphysical concepts. Coleman's work is known for its use of what most perceive as indefinite meter. The feel of the music is usually groove-based, but with a loose, spontaneous fluid structure that is the consequence of the melodic, harmonic, and rhythmic relationships of various cycles, expressed using an extemporaneous concept. Okay. In creating his music, Steve has used methods that can be linked to two concepts, energy and sacred geometry. Steve's latest recording is Live at the Village Vanguard, Volume 1, and it's available on PI Recordings. Steve, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you. I got the books behind me because I'm trying to match the other brothers,
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm trying to keep up with you.
I know you probably read most of your books. I've read about 10%. This is the collection. Exactly.
Okay. All right. My books are mine are off camera. Y'all can't see all of them. So what we like to do is we'd like to bring out our prolific institution in our department, Dr. John Bracey, who's going to introduce our very special guest, our elder. If we can make Dr. Bracey long. Dr. Bracey has been on faculty at the Du Bois Department since 1972, and he'll tell you a little more. Let's make Dr. Bracey larger, and he'll tell you a little more about his work, and then he will introduce Mr. Reggie Workman. Thank you.
No, thank you. If this keeps up, we can bring the whole thing back to the basement of New Africa House like it was 50 years ago, where I didn't have to look at the screen. I could just walk down the steps and talk to Max and Archie and Reggie and Yusuf Lateef, Marion Brown, Stanley Cowell, people like that in one building. But sometimes you have to look back in order to see which way you're going and to see how far you have to go. See how much further we have to go. 50 years ago, I came from Chicago. I didn't know Coleman from Chicago. Hope he's South Side, otherwise we had a fight on our hands. Coming from a South Side, you South Side? Steve, not talking.
Definitely.
Okay. South Side's cool. Okay, we cool.
Really.
No. Coming from a decade in Chicago, when I landed in Amherst, you drive through cornfields. I ended up in what turned out to be a kind of oasis of African American culture, just by surprise. I mean, I don't know if they planned it, but when I got here, the names just started hitting me. You know, the minute I hit the door, you know, Max Roach, Archie Shepherd, you know, office across from me, office down the hall from me, Yusuf Lateef in the air school, Roland Wiggins in the air school. And then somebody told me the biggest lie in the world. They said, Reggie Workman is up on Orchard Hill. And I said, yeah, and I'm on the moon. Why in God's name would Reggie Workman be anywhere near Amherst? And they said, well, he's like working there. I said, oh, like I'm truly in heaven now, because John Coltrane is the saint of all saints, and anybody that came anywhere near John Coltrane, you know, like I want to touch their hand, that kind of thing. And so I had a wonderful opportunity to interact with an amazing group of artists, not just musicians, but visual artists like Nelson Stevens, dancers like Diana Ramos, writers like Chinua Achebe and James Baldwin later on. And what it confirmed to me was that we could sing our song in this strange land. You know, you got that Rasta song, how can we sing the Lord's song? And you say, well, yeah, we can. We can clear out a space. And for a time, we had a space up in Amherst where you had an oasis of African-American culture, where we were trying to protect ourselves against the Nixon administration and the Reagan administration and all that, and try to figure out if we could hold on to see a way forward. And Reggie was very much a part of that. The last time I saw him was when he came to UMass, because we had a memorial for Max Roach in 2008 after Max had died in 2007. And we had this wonderful panel that had, you know, Herb Boyd, Randy Weston was in town. And Reggie did a joint performance with Sonia Sanchez. And I remember the music department saying, well, they don't have a lot of time to practice together. Do you think they can work this out with such a short notice? And I'm sitting there laughing. I said, do you know who you're talking about? And they said, well, we can book a room if they need a practice room. I said, I think half an hour. I think they're grown people and accomplished. I think they can figure out how to play together. It doesn't take 2 days or whatever. And of course they were great, you know. But again, that's the difference between knowing the culture and not knowing the culture, right? We couldn't afford to have rehearsal time. So who has 2 days to practice anything? I mean, you're dead broke if you're trying to do that kind of stuff, right? And so of course Reggie performed well and talked about his working with Max and his solidarity with Max. Reggie, in short, is one of those flames from 50 years ago, one of those flames in a much more optimal time, a time when we were looking up and moving forward, that hadn't been extinguished. You know, there's some people that fell on the wayside. There's some people that quit, but Reggie's still here. You know, he's still producing. He's still glowing. So, you know, as I mentioned, you know, if you're talking about a light, if you're that kind of flame, you know, you can look back to Reggie and see where we came from. And you can follow Reggie on into the future because he's still here. He's still shining, still a guide. And I think we have to do both if we want to keep our balance. We don't want to think we started with ourselves and are doing this thing by ourselves. And so having a great artist like Reggie still with us, still active, still producing great music is a sign that we came from somewhere. You know, we've been great a long time. We didn't just get great. We've been great a long, long time. And Reggie's a living example of that. And I'm glad to see him again. I'm glad to reconnect with the UMass thing. And we got to get him back up in the valley. We'll clear out a space, you know, get him whatever he wants to eat, whether it's healthy or not healthy, and get back to the old days so we can figure out how to move forward. So welcome, Reggie. I'm glad I got a chance to see you again and say hi. I'm looking forward to the panel.
What a wonderful introduction. Beautiful introduction, Doctor. Thank you very much. And I'm happy to be here with all the brothers whom I don't get a chance to see as often as I'd like. And then you are special because I don't see you at all. Now here we are. Maya, thanks for bringing us together.
Thank you, sir. So where shall we begin? I'd love to hear, I know that I didn't see any reactions to the statement that I read. And of course, those are some perspectives coming from a Black Studies perspective, but I'd like to maybe hear some reactions. And maybe we'll start with you, Mr. Workman. You know, we were talking earlier about how jazz had a Black audience and now it doesn't. And we just were wondering if you could shed some light on how we got here. And we'll start with that.
Big issue there. Well, we got here because the veil has been pulled down over the culture, and therefore the people who supported it and related to it stopped relating after the media really cut it off and tried to cut it off. I said cut it off, but no such thing. It was not in vogue. In other words, we had to really work and fight to to stay present. We had to work hard to do everything we could do in order to stay present and in front of the people and being in tune with our community. Meanwhile, our community is going further and further away as the entrepreneurs of Madison Avenue pushed things that were mainly looking back instead of looking forward.
Sir, what do you mean by that? What was being pushed to look back instead of forward?
Well, as you said before earlier in the show, we started with the blues and the chants and the African culture, and that was what this music grew from. And we don't stay in one spot. We had the blues, the chant, the African cultures, the gospel music, and so forth, and that was our culture that we understood. From there, we began to evolve. But all of our people did not evolve with us because we were busy as a culture, busy spanking the wolf and looking at whatever the media says do as kind of a Simon Says syndrome. So here we are. We stayed in one spot so long as far as the broad culture is concerned, and only the people who are awake and interested in futuristic mindset move forward. We were not able to take all of our culture with us because we did not have that much media control.
Any responses or thoughts to that, gentlemen?
Say that again. I didn't hear you.
Oh, I was just inviting everyone to respond to your sharing, Mr. Workman. Any thoughts on that?
I was happy that Mr. Workman said media control, because that's an issue across the board in everyday life. There's one company that owns all of the local news stations. There's practically one company that owns all of the radio stations. So that's a big factor of lack of access to communities, to arts that can enrich a person's life. So the fact that he acknowledged, a master such as himself acknowledged media control, I think that's a big issue. And that's a way to not get a message across, is to cut off the system that would allow certain things to be heard, seen, or even read.
Exactly.
I would say that the elements of our culture, I mean, with that media, it's a matter of what they choose to emphasize, and they chose to emphasize that which, well, the way Sonny Rollins broke it down to me, he said that there's two types of music: that which expands consciousness and that which contracts it, and what they chose to push forward and to advertise and everything is that which contracted consciousness, that which lowers everything. I mean, the brothers know that everywhere we go, the image that people around the world have of African Americans is a certain image that comes from movies and things like this, So I might go to Egypt and I might be visiting the pyramids, and some young Egyptian cats will come up to me and say, well, oh, do you rap? Do you break dance? Do you? They have a certain image of that comes from the media, and they've never heard of any of the things that Reggie is talking about. They've never even heard of these things. And I think that even in our own country, that happens. People have never heard of these things, and so therefore they don't get the exposure to it. And the rest of it is the appropriation stuff that you're talking about.
And I do want to say that I, read my own, analysis, of cultural appropriation concerning the music. But I do want you all to share, how do you see it? You know, how would you define how cultural appropriation has happened concerning the music that we call jazz? And by the way, audience
We don't.
members, just 1 second, Steve. Those in our live stream audience, please feel free to share your comments, ask questions. We're going to just take them as we go along. We want to hear from you. Take it away, Steve.
No, I just said it. I mean, just speaking for myself, I don't call it jazz. You know, I mean, so, you know.
Are you saying that the naming is a part of the cultural appropriation?
Well, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think so. I mean, you can listen to Max or, you know, or John or Reggie or any of these people, and they'll tell you this. You know, they told us for a long time. Duke Ellington told us this a long time ago. You know, so I mean, I know some people, you know, tend to do that because it's easier, and it's just easier to talk in those terms because that's the terms that people understand and everything. But I mean, I believe that we need to push back against that, you know, and they've been pushing back against it for a long time. It's not new, you know. I mean,
can I introduce a term, Steve? It's a little challenge, not a challenge to what you're saying, but I want to use this term hegemony, right? Power. We can push back against it, but at the same time, if performing arts institutions are marketing a series as a jazz series and people have to work, I'm just wondering what else can we do, you know, aside from kind of just boycott all, you know, performances that use the term jazz, but then how could that happen? So I just wanted to throw that in there for you.
Well, before we went online, you know, Reggie was discussing this, you know. I mean, he was talking about this. He was talking about African American music, Black music, whatever you want to call it, you know. And he said, why is it a problem? We can call, you know, music from China, Chinese music or whatever. We can call music from everywhere else, everything else. But when it comes here, all of a sudden, you know, I mean, Black people, they want to erase that from the music, you know, or even call it racist that I even say that, you know. And I don't see how that's a problem. You don't have a problem calling German music, you know, or Italian opera, you know. So I just don't see what the problem is, you know. But it's always a problem, and people outside the United States don't generally have a problem. I think the problem is here in this country, you know.
Well, we live in a racist society that perpetuates that. You know, first of all, you teach the people to hate self and hate the way they look and not relate to from whence we came. And you erase the idea of it being African American music, which gives you a land, gives you a country, gives you a culture, gives you an experience with another culture. And you have an explanation in just the name. But where is jazz? What country is that? What society is jazz? You know, what does that have to do with it besides a name that came out of the brothels of New Orleans? You know, which was originally JAS, J-A-S, which was the soldiers and the military people used to go to the brothels and trick with the prostitutes. And the name was Jive and Ass. So jazz became jazz. Later, when we're pulling the covers over the truth. And all those things are real. All those facts are in front of us, but there's so much to talk about. There's so many things to talk about. Just for example, when early days of so-called rock and the changeover for electronics came in when the electric companies were building the computers and building the Moogs and building the amplifiers and wanted to sell those things. They pushed the electronic music for the blues people, and they used the Beatles with image of young white boys with big wigs down over their face to push that into the young people's minds in this country who's had the financial resource to buy all those instruments and push that forward. Okay, so the Beatles, the reason why they were great is, by the way, but the reason they became so popular is because their parents didn't spank them for how dare you listen to those black people's music. It was a different culture, a different society. They were able to listen and learn and say, okay, I want to be like that. But here in the United States, the kids who would possibly go that way, the parents would not allow them to deal with it because that's taboo. That's across the other side of the track. Consequently, the Beatles and the Europeans became more adept with the music and the blues that they were pushing at that time than the young people of our own country. And so when the Beatles came over and became as big as bubblegum and went home with multi-millions, hypothetically speaking, they turned the image around as to what was in vogue. And while that image is coming forward, we're pushed in the background. JD.
Oh no, I just want go. Please finish, Mr. Workman. I just wanted to signal to Maya. I wanted to add on to that, but please finish.
Please do, because I could talk about it forever because it's a deep.
I mean, I just wanted to say, you know, in terms of the jazz, the word jazz, you know, I would hate to think at this point in our culture that we're going to give room for a power to give us the concession. Okay, they don't call it jazz, and then they call it black music. That's a concession. That's not changing anything if they call it what we want to call it. The word appropriation, and just going on what Maya said about her definition about cultural appropriation, the word I wrote down that spoke out, that really was ringing like a bell of truth to me, was power. You can call it what you want, but if we don't have the power to bring it into our communities, and if they say they, meaning whoever we're speaking to call it black music or music from here or there or jazz, if they give us that concession, I mean, that's kind of weak a little bit. Not disrespectful, but that's not really changing anything, is it? So the issue here is, I think, in my opinion, is power, and which means if you have power, that means you have access. And our youth in the contemporary world are not having access because why? They don't have power. So we can call it black music, we can call it jazz, we can call it Black American music, band, whatever we want to call it. But if we make that the only thing on the table as to what we think would change it, you know, then Beetlejuice, no Beetlejuice. What is it going to do? So the issue is power. That's what
I think. Also, we're dealing with you know, years and years of kind of like a anti-intellectualism going on. I mean, there's been a concerted effort to dumb down as much shit as possible, because when you dumb down things, when you dumb down a society, you can sell shit like, you know, needless wars. People, you know, they become consumerists. You can convince them that if I buy this, I'm a better person. So critical thought, art appreciation, all of that is gone or very much diminished. So I think that has also affected everything. You know, it's kind of like we see it in hip hop, how, you know, things that get popular in hip hop are usually, I mean, the bar has been lowered so much because you don't have to have like a talent pool. Everybody's a talent pool. You can go to any city and find 1,500 people to do what is popular on the radio. I think that you know, so in addressing it, I mean, we have to consider like everything.
Mm-hmm. I have a question for everybody. JD, you mentioned the term power, which is everything. You know, we talk about cultural appropriation. You might mention the term access. Just how, if we could just kind of get it out there, how is it that there was plenty of access for the African-American young people who are indigenous to the music to learn to play the music, to engage with the music, and now there's none? How did this happen?
We could just look at where the money goes into in each community. How much money goes into the inner city communities? How much money goes into the suburbs? No fault of their own. You know, I'm not indicting a particular group of people, but there is a system. I mean, look at what's going on with access to voting. I think it's 150 bills that are trying to be passed in terms of stopping voting. So that, that affects going down. That affects access to the arts, access to your rights. That's all included. So like Eric said, just to echo to what he says, is everything. Everything is affecting this situation.
Mr. Workman, you have, sorry, Nasheet, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna respond to some of the stuff that JD was talking about, maybe with a personal statement. I remember being in a junior high school band here in New York City. I'm a resident in New York City, and we would travel to the different junior high schools and elementary schools playing band. And these were all the kids in the junior high school. And not everybody went on to become a professional musician, but could play well enough to play the music, traveling over different places in the city. By the time my brother went to the same junior high school 10 years after me, they had the same instruments. It was dilapidated. The state of the program had diminished to the point where nobody really wanted to participate. Mm-hmm. So I mean, it was discouraged. I mean, so sometimes it's about it's also and that was defunded. Like in the Reagan era, I caught the tail end of that. Yeah. The Reagan era, they came in and they defunded all of the arts program, along with mental health and all of that type of stuff. So you see like a big gap. And I use that image to talk about the nature of the bands, because I'm saying like these were kids who weren't necessarily going to become professional musicians, but they invested enough time into the arts to have them be proficient enough to sound good on the clarinet, on the on these different instruments. They went on to do whatever they wanted to do with their lives, but it contributed to it. Mm-hmm. And they removed that from the system in most places. So now it's about access and wealth. If you have wealth, then you have access to different types of cultural outlets. But if you don't, then you don't.
And I'm gonna, Mr. Workman, please respond. But I'm just going to let y'all know that I'm going to have to name a name. Okay, I'm going to have to name an organization's name after we hear from Mr. Workman concerning the removal and who had access to quote unquote jazz education post 1980. Mr. Workman, what are your thoughts on this?
I didn't get the question.
No, I was saying to what JD, Nasheet, and Eric and those. What are your thoughts on the way? Can you all restate what?
We were basically saying that. Well, Nasheet brought up very brilliantly, I might add, the effects of Reaganomics, where the Reagan era started taking out music education programs, and even as far as dealing with mental health, and that in our opinion is a big contributing factor to why we don't see a lot of Black Americans involved in music programs, because there aren't any music programs. Therefore, there's a lack of access to the music that's affordable. I mean, because if it wasn't for music in the schools for me in Detroit, Michigan, there's no way I would have had a horn or had some type of lesson. So it's just about the state of access in inner city America, United States of America. Now that's basically what I think we were saying.
Yeah, something very important. If you think about now, if we were aspiring to be in the orchestra and play European classical music, we would have been well funded. But we were aspiring to play African American music, so that was not well funded. The money that comes through National Endowment and all the federal funding places, it goes to the orchestras. It does not go to the jazz areas or the more commercial or ethnic programs as much. That's a situation. It all goes back to the same racist ideology that we live in under today, yesterday, and all these other days. And you can think back to times when we had to create collective Black artists in order to make work for people to to go to. There, we were not getting calls for the studios. We were not getting calls for the orchestra. Art Davis had a PhD for bass, but they wouldn't accept him. There are a lot of people who were fantastic, but they were not accepted because of the racist society that we live in. And we, the people, have to outgrow that. We have to figure out a way and continue to figure out a way to outgrow that, because as long as we have to stay in one spot fighting that, we don't go further. And our music is supposed to go on out into the universe. That's how high it is. John tried to tell us, Coltrane was trying to tell us that. He's trying to tell us that all the people who were of a futuristic mindset were dealing with things far beyond being steeped into fighting the people who are trying to hold you down. And that's the way, that's what, oh, by the way, Mother Moore used to tell us, so what does Negro mean? It's Latin for never grow. So that is when things begin to bring you light and find out why things are happening. What do we do about it? So in the East, they made alternative schools for the young kids who were not getting the information. In the music society, we made alternative venues. When the Loft era came in, we made alternative gigs. We created our own record companies. But when we started to publish our own music, no good. When I first came to New York and worked with Gigi Grace, he used to carry a pistol and come to my hotel room at the Flanders Hotel, nervous as a cat, because the gangsters had gone into his office and rifled through his file cabinets and destroyed all of his records, because he was the one who was into business, into talking the jazz set, into creating their own companies and their own publishing companies and so forth. And therefore he was taboo. And those things it's been going on for as long as we can live. But the reason I said that we can't be stable, we can't stop at that place where people are trying to keep us spanking the wall, keep us fighting back, keep us doing everything, and so to survive, that we can't grow. And that's what, again, I'll relate to what John was saying, but this is not what I'm here for. I'm not here for fighting with the fact that the society is going to give somebody else a gig and not me. I'm here to go further. I'm here to take the nation further. I'm here to, well, he said everything. I don't need to say any of that, because he said it in his lyrics. He said it in his horn, through his horn. He said it in his lifestyle as he cleaned up and grew to another thing. And he showed us where the music can take the people. And I think all of us are recipients of that. And we're talking about our own situation. We're prejudiced for our people, but that doesn't mean we're prejudiced against anybody else or anything else, other societies, because everyone has something to offer. And as we grow, as we mature, we begin to get the benefit of all the things that other people have to offer. Like the Hindu society feels the music, they hear tones between the tones. They hear that they're beyond the 12-tone galaxy, which is a music thing that we work from. They hear many other tones. So their mind is universally beyond the 12-tone galaxy, and their intellect is beyond the 12-tone galaxy. And all of us who are ordained to deliver that message and have the people to grow in that area, regardless of where the people are from, are the ones who are going to be more in vogue as far as longevity is concerned. These are my beliefs. Who's somebody speaking?
Oh, I don't. Okay, Steve, did you? Well, can we address Mr. Workman? Thank you so much. So it sounds like we need to kind of maybe state some things and then move on to the solutions, right? We're all concerned. We're all invested in this, and any comments? We were talking, JD, Nasheet, and Eric the other day. We said that we were going to raise issues of the institutionalization of jazz, dangerous rhetoric that disavows, jazz elders, and generally the whitening, of the image of the music in print media. And so, do we want to say any comments on that? Mr. Work, we'd love to hear your insights, Steve, everybody, and then let's move on to how we can move into some solutions.
I think with
maybe start with institutionalization.
Well, it's still, it's all, I mean, in my opinion, it is all connected to once again access. I mean, it lends itself to being controlled and who gets in, who sees what, and it's not something that's like, okay, it's these evil mastermind people that just want to do damage to people. It's a capitalist society. If you got money, then you can get into these situations. If you don't, you can't.
How did it become so expensive to you mentioned an anecdote about who these jazz programs at schools are designed for, and can you share that if you feel comfortable, and let's talk
right is right and wrong is wrong. I mean, if anyone is offended by what I say, and I'm not saying I know everything, we are at a point in society where I hate that word woke, because a lot of us didn't have an opportunity to sleep at night or watch our parents or grandparents sleep. So woke is it's a realization for our brothers and sisters on 1 and 3 to realize that this is going on around them. So I'm not indicting them. But while our brothers and sisters are awake at the moment, look around at yourself, at your school, for those who are out there listening, to those who will listen and this later on. Look at who's next to you, and look at Mr. Workman, who is on here with us, who's played in all these great bands and made such wonderful contributions. This thing is not about style, at least in my opinion. Jazz is not a style or a genre of music. It's a way of life. It's a way of life. It's a way to live. It's a problem solving situation. So if you don't see someone like me or some of these brothers and sisters on here, you have to ask yourself, what the hell happened? And what the media and society would tell you, well, it's not in style. We can't dance to it. We even say that in our own cultures. That's not it. This music, jazz is not dead because there's a lot of schools that are making money off jazz. So it's not dead, And once again, I have to keep saying it's an issue of access. So somebody out there is probably saying, well, pull up your bootstraps and get the money so you can do it there. This is America. Get that money. It's all about getting that money, right? Well, it's a lot going on outside of only not playing the horns. There's conditions of life that doesn't allow for people to get the finances to put their children in such wonderful programs to sit next to your children. We don't even have music appreciation anymore, which would be a nice problem solver for just letting people learn about each other and learn about appropriation without power. Like, well, yeah, I got this from this community and I got this from, we don't even have that anymore. Critical thinking is a problem. And we all know this is true because we just experienced a hellish 4 years with President Trump. That is why, because critical thinking is a problem. So I hope I answered some of your questions, Maya, without necessarily beating only on an institution. The whole thing is jacked up.
Well, I mean, thank you, JD. I think plainly stated, what JD is saying in a very gentle and circuitous way is that jazz programs around the country are majority white. Yeah. That's what's going on. For those of you who don't know, that's what's going on. Black young people maybe there are a few that can get in, and certainly a few that can afford the $40,000-$50,000 tuition a year to get into these institutions. At the same time, at historically Black colleges, there are less than 6 jazz studies programs. And that's where, I mean, like it or lump it, that's where people go now to get training in the music, right?
Since
And
you put it like that, yeah, you said it. You nailed it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and by the way, folks,
Yeah.
I think we're having a technical problem with Mr. Workman, but he'll be back soon. I'm not sure what has happened, but he'll be back. And maybe I should, we'll be back shortly. We'll fix it. So yeah, I mean, and it's not only, and I don't, correct, y'all jump in, but if I'll say it, it's not only the issue with, jazz studies programs. Very few African Americans go to undergrad. Fewer get master's degrees, and even fewer than that. 2% of all PhDs awarded go to African Americans, maybe 11%. So maybe we're talking in terms of jazz studies degrees to African Americans per year, there might be less than 50, less than 100 awarded per year. And if this is the only route to study the music, what is happening? But my question is this, and please, y'all, I'm going to name a name. What about the work of is it the IAJE? It was called the International Jazz Association of Jazz Educators, which is now no longer in operation. But I noticed that, they were centered in Denver, where there are few African Americans, and they seem to have a hand as far as what I could see in their conferences, and really making sure that non-Black young people got access and education in instruments and jazz. And so I just wanted to hear any comments on that.
The thing that Nasheet said earlier when he was talking about Reagan, I thought that was important because, I'm old enough that I saw all of that, and going all the way back to the 20s, a lot of young Black kids got access to instruments in grammar schools and high schools. My family didn't have enough money to buy an instrument and everything. I used the school's instrument, and
Same here.
Charlie, it's the same with Charlie Parker. Actually, it's not just the same with us. They used the school instruments, and that's how they got into the that's how you even begin to play before you even go on to the higher level institutions and everything. I wouldn't have even been able to do that. First of all, I didn't go to schools like Berkeley and stuff like that, but for those who did, they played before they got there. They didn't learn how to play. They didn't start playing at Berkeley or start playing at the new school, whatever. They played. You look at Donald Harrison and Branford Marsalis and all those guys. They played. Branford's a little different because he comes from a musical family. Like Nasheet. But those guys played before they got to the schools because they played in high school. Like JD, we were talking about this last time. We started playing in high school. And so I already had like 3 or 4 years of musical experience before I even got to college age, if I had decided to go that way, Yeah. And so that makes a big difference. Now in Chicago, as JD knows, on the South Side, they stopped all those programs, except for maybe like Hyde Park or certain little enclaves, But on the North Side, the programs were still happening, And so those kids still had instruments in their high schools and stuff like that. And like at South Shore and some of these places, we didn't, So I'm just saying that that what Nasheet mentioned, I think that played a big role because even going all the way back to the era before Charlie Parker, people were getting access to instruments, poor people in those high schools and in the grammar schools and things like that. So that makes a big difference. And so of course the kids turned to whatever they could turn to make music, And so that's one of the reasons why I think what people call hip hop or whatever. I just think it's just people making music by whatever means that they have it available.
Yeah. Again, access is the key word, I think, in all these situations. Is what you have available to you. That's what you use to create.
Sure.
The resources that when we were in elementary school, everybody played recorder and stuff like that for a few years. They don't do that anymore. You know what I'm saying? Just to get you in tune with music making. What that takes, just the function, the creativity of it, the functionality and so forth. They've eliminated all that in the society. So it's really like a commentary on the society on the whole. Really, you know, like we were talking about earlier, capitalist society, access if you have money.
It's not eliminated everywhere though. That's my point. You know, I mean, it's not all schools that don't have.
No. We're saying it's limited in areas where they decide to defund that and whatever. So it's always which always happens in the poorer communities,
right.
regardless of color or any of that. You know what I'm saying? It's like if you don't have any loot, you have no access.
Yes.
Well, you know, and I think we also find a thing where you know the monetization of academia, of higher learning. So, you know, unlike other professions, if I spend so many thousands of dollars to send my child to get an engineering degree, they're going to get out and get a job, or they stand somewhat of a chance to do that. With performance art or performing arts, especially jazz, there is no guarantee. But it became a people service industry. It became big money for these institutions to teach jazz. So what they do is like these people go through this system, then they just end up rehiring people who've never been out on the road, who don't have any practical experience, who go back into the system. And so now we're dealing with generations upon generations of people teaching, you know, at this higher level that actually, I think in aggregate haven't done anything. I mean, I think that affects the music tremendously. I mean,
yeah, you're right. It's a cycle, you know.
It's a cycle, and it's like the, you know, and this sounds really rough, but it's not too sound rough, but it's like the blind leading the dumb, and you know, all this kind of stuff. It's
yeah,
you know, I mean, it's just like, well, so I think that presents another problem in terms of the trajectory of the music. I don't know. What do y'all think?
I mean, I agree. I mean, in terms of what Maya said about the IAJE,
I remember that you said those conferences, right? Like all over the.
I remember taking a school trip, a high school trip to when it was in New Orleans in the 80s at some point. Right. And we rode down and we raised some money, and we took a bus trip. It was a wild bus, a bus trip down to New Orleans. And that's where I first met Branford. So I saw, and then I met Alvin Baptiste, which was amazing. But I thought that was positive. But I think around that time, it wasn't, you still could go into the community, you know, whereas we were going to the IAJE. When I got back to Detroit, you know, on Friday, I was going to Burt's Marketplace, sneaking out my crib to see Larry Smith play or Marcus Belgrave. So it was still some cultural barriers in the community. Now we have nothing like that. There is no elder in the community where you can go to and apprenticeship, you know, that doesn't exist. So it's all based off of the schools now. So if you want to learn how to play this music, you go to a school, you know, so maybe that's why an IAJE is no longer in existence. What's taking the place of that? I'm not quite sure. Is there anything
I'm not sure. I know that they, you know, not all not-for-profit organizations can sustain, and they are defunct. You know, I don't know. You know, I'm not sure. I think what's taking the place maybe are the institutions that, you know.
I mean, it would be nice if the HBCUs that start a form of an IAJE.
Right.
To do some of these initiatives that were wonderful to hear, going into inner city communities, and because, you know, now it's not only is it a enriching, at least in my opinion, it enriches your life to learn an instrument. Period. There's some neurological things that go on that help you change.
Learn an instrument or sing, brother.
Or sing. Well, that is your instrument, right? So I put you in there already. You know, that is an instrument as far as I'm concerned. And I've seen, and I think we've all been in bands where we've seen vocalists use it as such, as an instrument that you're born with. And our goal, at least my goal, is always to, you know, the highest goal is to try to sound like a voice. But what I'm saying is that I think it would be really cool if the HBCUs would take on an initiative to start a version of the IAJEs, you know, for inner city or rural communities, and just and then it would probably help the situation of the lack of jazz education within those communities, instead of us always looking over here and telling someone to change.
Right.
Right. I think
it's
right. Exactly. It's unrealistic to expect the
pictures back.
Okay.
Okay,
it's
we have
unrealistic.
Back. Thank you, Mr. Workman.
Yes, Mr. Workman. There we go.
Wow, that was a trip. I've been around the world a couple times with John. He walked me through it. Okay, good to be back.
Thank
Good
you,
to be
John.
back.
Thank you, John. Nasheet, we were just talking about we had moved into the solutions arena, Mr. Workman, and we're talking about, you know, not expecting organizations who, you know, are operated by those who might have more of a colonial mentality in the music to change. And how do we establish our own? There is a HBCU Jazz Initiative underway. And Nasheet, you were talking, you know.
No, that was you're echoing my sentiments. You know, if you can't expect the colonizer to alter their modes of operation because you're signifying the injustice, that's that's how they got where they were. with the injustice, you know what I mean? So I mean, at this juncture, it's our responsibility to be able to go to try to not to try, but to, and everybody's been doing it in their own way and in the individual way. So I think the unity in the community can aid in perpetuating the culture and the truth within our community and throughout the world. You know, that's really, I think, where the focus needs to be. Along with illuminating the injustices, but now it's time to act on what we can do in order to be able to alter that narrative.
I have two questions. One, in terms of identity, well, I have a theory, and then maybe JD. I hear an echo. JD, Nasheet, Eric, you all can share the if you would like, the efforts of We Up and what, you know, the plan is, and maybe we can get some guidance and insight from Steve and Mr. Workman. So, do you all feel that it is maybe it's more than a coincidence? Maybe you all can shed light on this, that all of a sudden instruments, you know, the access to instruments, the access to music education generally, you know, was defunded just after the Black Power movement, right? Just after all of these gains have been made during the civil rights movement that were totally driven by all forms of Black music. And then just after that, you know, within the Reagan years, as you all said, all of a sudden, you know, all of the arts in the inner city where Black folks mostly live were cut. Could that be something that is a measure of colonialism? Or why then is this music so important to Black identity, and why has it been under such attack in that way? Any comments or thoughts on that?
The music is powerful. Why did they take the drums from us in Congo Square? Why did they eliminate the ability to perform? Why did they eliminate our ability to read? You could get murdered if you taught a Black person to read. You could get persecuted if you were playing drums when you were not supposed to play drums. Why did the people in Brazil have to go to capoeira in order to preserve their martial arts and their communication? All those things are very apparent and very, you know, it's right before us. The answers are there. And we've done many things to try to circumvent these answers, but we just have to grow away from the status quo. And each time our situation is put down, we have to have another way to come to emerge and rise up again. I don't know. I noticed, what's his name? Has written a book called Rise Up, the one who goes around and does eulogies for all these folks who've been getting killed. Reverend Al Sharpton. And then I saw Farrakhan talking about how important hip hop is. When jazz came along, that was put down. Now hip hop is coming along, and that's talking about to everybody around the world. And hip hop is nothing but a result of our experience in the community. We didn't have record players, so we didn't have instruments, so we scratched our way into sound. We scratched our way into rhythm, and we couldn't have instruments, so we spoke the word. I can't sing, so I speak in rhythm, and that message went all over the world. It's affecting everybody all over the world. Now, what you going to do about that? No instrument to take away. No rhythm. You can't take away the rhythm when I beat on the can. So it's just the history repeating itself, and us who have to grow away from that. As long as we keep involved with revolution instead of evolution, that's where we'll be, and that's what we leave for our kids. You know, that's what we leave for our society, unless we figure out a way to grow away beyond all of that. There's so many other things to talk about. There's so much more in the Akashic records for us to deal with than fighting against the heathen who can't understand and can't accept anything, and whose ego grows out of the barrel of a gun. And now we got the gun law. Now we have all of that in our face. So we as a society have to grow beyond that and not deal with the Negro syndrome.
I like that. I think we have grown 5 or 6 times probably. No, but you know what?
Yes, we have.
Oh yeah, we have no choice. But
yeah, no choice not to stop.
But the thing is, I think, in my opinion, I think once we realize within these 6 choices, meaning the so-called genres between us, once we realize that it's not about what's new or current, or Mr. Workman is not relevant, or Mr. Coleman is not relevant at this point, but in terms of a culture-wise, we are all relevant in these different forms of saying our truths, whether it's through entertainment or activism within the notes and the words that we sing. Once we realize that that is just one story being told consistently over many generations, then we're stronger together. If there's a situation where there could be some type of organization where all of the music is just one, and we all respect each other for the culture, just for simply the fact that we are living in this culture, then there's no dividing any of us. Because yesterday is just as important as now or tomorrow, because they're all relevant, you know? Mm-hmm. So that's what I think. So I think once the 1% was able to say, to pervert our music, which was, when you listen to Curtis Mayfield, I used to listen to Curtis Mayfield, and my parents would play Curtis Mayfield, and they would stop whatever they were doing, and I would see them go into this thought process. I think once the 1% realize that we are empowering each other through our arts, then our arts became a perversion. It became a perversion of what it was, a reflection, but it was a perverted reflection. Now, I'm not dissing any of the younger brothers and sisters, she, they, he, or whatever you want to call yourself, or what you're doing. But it's a perversion from what the original purpose of what this is. It became disposable entertainment, and that's all we have. It's not wrong with party. I love the party too. But the music and all forms of the art form were used for specific purposes, whether telling people not to go somewhere because that's not where you need to run, whether telling you to stand up, don't give up the fight, whether telling you I love you, and Black men and women being able to show and express love through song when you didn't really see it that much on the visual television. Now everything is a perversion. It's your body, sex, and how much money you got. And that's what our babies are growing up listening to. That is the problem. So when you got a Steve Coleman that might come to my neighborhood, you might not see all the kids on a basketball court running to him and recognizing his greatness, or Mr. Workman's greatness, or any of my brothers and sisters out here greatness, because to them, however units you sell, whatever amount of units you sell, and how much sexual perversion you can show, that's a form of success, and that is the issue to me, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
Yes,
I'm going to use a word called. I'm going to use a term called identity colonialism.
Right.
That's what we're dealing with. That's what. So what can we do? What should we do? How do we move forward? Maybe should we kind of share some solutions that we're engaging in now?
I don't want to talk too much. I'm just trying to shut up. Now she's good at it too, Eric. They talk way better than I do. I'll run my mouth just as, don't worry about talking too much, Mr. Workman. I talk way more than you. So y'all jump in.
I think we're all taking part. Oh, no, please. Yeah, Mr. Workman. Yes.
Well, Maya was saying, what can we do? If you look at what we have done, that was put down and the growth stopped. It's still a way of continue to do what has been done better, and do not allow it to be put asunder.
Agreed.
I think that's what we can do. I mean, all these organizations didn't pop up for nothing. All of this music didn't come up for no reason. It didn't grow from nowhere. It grew from an experience that we did not accept, and that is what we have done in order to keep from dying in the face of opposition in the past, and we have to continue to do that. And it doesn't have to be negative. And that is the reason why I brought up a minute ago when Farrakhan was saying, like, one parent was talking to him about the words and the lyrics and the disrespecting women in the hip hop area. He surprised me when he said, well, listen, you got to praise these students, these youngsters, and teach them how to do it in a positive light. Do it better, say more stories, better words, and keep the rhythm, keep the culture, keep the groove, keep the party, keep on dancing, have the world dancing, but have them dancing to some positive thoughts. That's what we have to do, because we are ordained to change this planet, and we can't give up on the job.
Well, I just want to be careful that we don't talk about supremacy here on any part, black or white. I want for the record it to be known that I'm not interested in being supreme over anybody. I'm just interested in what's right and for a bad situation. If that means somebody's going to come around yellow, blue, or red to help in a situation, I'm going to accept their help.
That's right. I can hear that.
I am going to accept their help. I am not going to say that I'm supreme over anyone, because I am only human, so I have to say that,
And to that point, JD, I talked, Dr. Bracey was on earlier, and I've talked to him a lot because he was a purveyor of the Black Power movement. And he says something that, let's lay it down. When we say Black Power, or we talk about Black nationalism, number one, there's no other group in the country that has the same positionality. We were the ones enslaved here. That's number one. And so when we say Black Power, what we mean is whole Black families with opportunities, thriving, living. That's what we mean. Of course, we don't.
Oh no, I'm in total agreement of that. So but I would never be an enemy of intellect to no one, ever.
Okay.
You understand what I'm saying? I would never be an enemy of intellect. I welcome good counsel, and I have to say that because I don't want it to be misunderstood. I work with allies. We have allies in our organization that don't look like any of us. And we accept that because that's intelligent to do that. Mm-hmm. Supremacy is one thing, because then we know better than anybody else if we claim that. And I always think it's better to have the position of the high moral ground and think what you want to think, be how you want to be. But you don't tell nobody, you don't be an enemy of intellect. No, I'm not gonna do that. What I'm talking about, and what We Insist organization is talking about, is a situation to fortify communities, inner city or rural America. Poor people come in all colors. I have to say that.
JD, can you talk a little, since we're talking about solutions, can you talk a little more about the work of We Insist and the work of...
Sure. Yeah, We Insist was an attempt to start, well, not an attempt, we started a situation where we would like to be an aid to the institutions that exist already. And once again, that word of access come up, and we got together, had informed a manifesto. Black, white, all types of people had input on it, because it's good to have people on the inside of the situation you're dealing with, because they can tell you what's going on. That is intelligent. So what we did was we started a situation where we have suggestions on making education beneficial for jazz. We saw that we didn't have pushback to what the We Insist organization. There wasn't any pushback, but we saw that maybe a better strategy would be a grassroots approach, and that's how We Up was invented. So it's the performance aspect of We Insist to foster grassroots approaches where we would curate different situations within inner city and rural America communities and deal with the community one-on-one. That's the basis of everything in a nutshell.
Yes, sir. So those of you who are interested in engaging in that work, we do have the caption of the websites that you can go and please share with us your contact information. JD, I have a little challenge. It's not a challenge. It's a push-in. I don't know if it's wrong to discuss particularly African-American children. I was in the classroom for a long time. I know the education system and sectors, and I know our Black communities because I've been in them for years, working with our young people. I've seen the transformative power of learning African-American identity through our heritage musics, right? Jazz, blues, the spirituals, Africa, right? Different African musics. And I've watched children change. I've watched that influence of the hip hop music that you were talking about. I've watched it fall away. I had a young little girl, I was just teaching them about the music of the Empire of Mali. And it started with watching the Roots movie, because that captured them. They were very difficult young people to work with. And that movie captured them, though, because they were very hungry for Black cultural education. And I said, well, how can I build this? And so we went into, we designed a whole unit with Kunta Kinte, right, as an entry point into the Mali Empire, the area of the Mali Empire where he came from, and the music traditions and the aesthetics. And so by the time we got finished, they saw a picture of Bessie Smith. And this little girl said, she looked at her adornment, and she said, that's African. And I said, my job here, I've done well, because she could recognize our identity. And so I think that there is an open space to make a case for, using our heritage musics to empower all young people, particularly disenfranchised, marginalized young people, but particularly our young people, because it is their culture. So I just wanted to hear some thoughts on that from everybody. Any thoughts at all?
Well, we don't live in a world by ourselves here. We're not by ourselves. Our face is not on the money, and we do not inhabit a world in this country where we're by ourselves. So yes, personally speaking, I try to tell my children to look anywhere, my children, for inspiration. Not just one place. Look, learn about as much as possible about many situations, because you don't live in a world by yourself. Yes, you're in this situation where the effects of a system has you in this particular position, but we don't have the luxury of just being in a world by ourselves. So empower yourself, learn about yourself, but also learn about the other person so you can learn how to deal in this world.
So to push into that, let me tell you what's happening in music education. And this is for everybody to please comment on. Steve, we want to hear everybody's voice. When our young people, our Black young people, walk into a music room, it is very likely that they will see Bach and Beethoven on the wall, busts and statues of the European Symphonic Orchestra and those instruments. They will see those instruments. They will maybe see images of Duke Ellington and maybe be exposed to jazz as an American art form, but they will not learn generally about Black music. Our African-American young people, that is what is going on. That is what's going on. So any comments on that and how does that play into?
I feel like that's, I'm sorry, were you finished, Maya? I didn't mean to
Oh, yes, sir.
interrupt you.
Go ahead, Nasheet.
I just think that's a commentary on the society at large. I mean, if you look at any textbook, and I mean, they're not giving it up to any Black genius or a Black ingenuity or any other type of culture. They ain't talking about Mexican genius or ingenuity either. It's, you know, it's generally all Eurocentric because we're in a situation that is dominated by that imperial force. So I mean, in order to be able to alter that, that's our responsibility. We can expect the person who's benefiting from that to want to change that. That's our responsibility if we're interested in doing that. We want to actually see some results. That's really a kind of, so I mean, this is important to illuminate the injustice and so forth. But now it's time to take the next step, which is going out into the community and being. We've already done our part in terms of the nature of the performance and the nature and the spiritual nature of what we do in terms of giving and interacting. That's the nature of what we do as musicians. And now we have to take it a step further and go directly into the community or find ways to access the community so that the younger people really, because we all see this in terms of young folks who are qualified to be in Steve's band or to play with Mr. Workman and so forth, and they are rarely coming out the neighborhoods or the situations that we came out of. So we need to be able to provide access to those people. That's really important. The access to, it's not only the access to the music, it's the access to, like Eric was talking about, critical thinking, creative thinking. It's not just like, okay, you have to know about the music exclusively. It's like this music is a conduit and a portal to creativity and some beautiful options in every sector, not just, music.
What he's saying is true, because I mean, it really is on us. I mean, and it was on us even in the previous generation. I mean, the people reached out to me. I mean, I can name many people: Sonny Stitt, Von Freeman, Marcus Belgrave, Abby Lincoln, Max Roach, Thad Jones. They deliberately reached out, to younger Black people to keep this music going and everything. And it's like it's a mentor system, and somebody reached out to them. It's not just we could, like he said, nobody's going to do this for us. I mean, it's just not going to happen. If you can be waiting, you can complain, you can march, you can do all of that. But I mean, we just, in terms of what we're talking about here, we have to reach out to people and go to some of these places where they are and everything. I mean, I've tried to do that myself, deliberately. I mean, I'm not just here just touring Europe and this and that. You have to actually go into the communities and reach out. And you have to make an effort to bring stuff to people. I mean, I've gone into communities. I've gone into like detention centers where people are being held and stuff like this. And some of these people have never even seen anybody play an instrument, any instrument. I take out my horn and I ask young Black kids, it's like, so what do you think this is? And they're like, is it a piano? Is it? I mean, they have no idea. I mean, I'm talking about a saxophone. They have no idea. And so you have to go in and actually do stuff. I think that's what Jazzmobile was about. I mean, they were like reaching out, and so we have to, it's on us. I mean, we could talk all day, but it's on us to actually do it. And so the organization that, the things that JD's talking about and everything, the thing that Reggie is doing, I mean, you've been an educator for a long time, and yes, you don't reject teaching anybody, but at the same time, you have to make a concerted effort to reach out to our own. You know, I mean, that
Yes.
has to be done.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, Thad Jones told me that he made an effort to find young black kids that can be in his band. You know, I mean, he made an effort. You know, I mean, because there was plenty of kids coming from like Maynard Ferguson's band and Stan Kenton's band and Buddy Rich's band, and they were everywhere. You know, he had to make an effort to find us. You know, and so so it goes both ways. You know, that's all I'm saying. You know, I mean, at least that's what he told me. He told me that it was getting harder and harder to find young black kids who can read and who can be in the band and everything. And so, you know, he made an extra effort for that. You know, and somebody made an extra effort for him. I mean, you know, somewhere down the line, you know. So,
and I know that Steve, you've done that where you've gone and done residencies in cities all over the place, man. And that's inspiring. It's really inspiring, man. I saw when you were out in West Coast, you know, there was something happening in Detroit, and it was like, wow, you know, that's it. And I think that we aspire to that.
A lot of times it's on our own dime. You know, somebody's not giving you money to do this. You know, it's like, you know. So I mean, but you brothers, I mean, I think everybody here is on the same page. I don't think that's the problem. You know, I mean, we
it's no problem at all. No, it's I agree. No, I'm familiar. I'm also familiar with your initiatives going into the communities and sharing your knowledge, and that's commendable, brother. That's happening. You know.
Yes.
But like I said, Jazzmobile, wasn't Jazzmobile doing that, Nasheet, before?
Oh yeah, that was the legacy of Jazzmobile. Oh yeah, that was the legacy of Jazzmobile.
Nasheet, is Jazzmobile still operating? I remember seeing Etta Jones, you know.
Maybe, but on a much reduced scale. Like when in the 70s, you can tell I'm a product of the 70s. In the 70s, they used to like it was a mobile. I'm sure you played on this many a times, Mr. Workman. There was a mobile that used to be out, and it would go into the community and just set up shop like wherever in Harlem, in the Bronx, or with the Queens, and incredible musicians, Mr. Workman, Frank West, my pops, you know, everybody would play it in that in the hood. You know, so there would be kids out dancing, and the fire hydrants would be going. It was really beautiful. And then along with that, they also offered really free music lessons on Saturday from Frank. You can get an arranging course from Frank Foster. I mean, that's mind blowing for free. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Charlie Persip was teaching up there. My father was teaching up there. Kenny Barron. I mean, the list goes on. You know, Ted Dunbar. I mean, just everybody in the community contributed. My father used to get up early Saturday morning and go up there all day for basically nothing, because and there were so many people who benefited from that. So many people who benefited from that because it was in the community, underserved community, and the people and the musicians provided that out of the kindness of their hearts. You know, the people who give you the love. You know, Max. I can think of everybody that I've come across. Michael Carvin basically taught me for free. Basically, they didn't want any money. That was because they felt like you said, a responsibility. Like we all have a cultural responsibility to connect this to the people who are interested in it. And even if they're not interested in it, we have to take them and be like, look, this is something you need to check out. The thought process that's involved in creating it. You don't necessarily have to like the music. That's incidental. You know, but we want you to understand that this greatness and this genius comes from you. This is an expression of who you are and what your potential is. That's the message that we want to be able to give to the people coming up under us. Give them the opportunity to do something that's not being programmed by the system that we're in. That's why the system eliminates the opportunity, because they don't want people to. They need a workforce. They want people to be stupid.
Yeah. You need people like buying Tide or
precisely,
McDonald's.
Precisely. Yeah. So all the popular music and all that stuff is directed towards dumbing you down, towards putting you in a certain spiritual mindset too, where you're not even going to be thinking about the type of elevation that we're talking about here, culturally and spiritually, emotionally, and all that type of stuff. They're trying to have. Yeah, exactly. A very myopic consciousness of what that's society on the whole. That's not. we're just a small subset. We're just an expression of that. This situation is that you could apply this to any situation. We could go into like the fashion, it'd be the same thing. You could go into literature, it'd be the same thing for those folks. It's the same. We're all dealing with the same. We're living in the same environment.
I really do. I really hope that the HBCUs, I really hope that at some point, all the generations in this music, seriously, like a serious meeting from Mr. Workman and Mr. Coleman, our generation and younger, and it could get together and figure out this HBCU situation, because this is embarrassing that's going on there. You know, we really need to make our services available for them and figure out how we can help that situation. Because, you know, I mean, I'm down with all I didn't go to Berkeley. I didn't go to a music school. I went to HBCU. I had to leave to learn how to play. You know, I was going to be a professional marching band person, and I wanted to play. Ain't nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with having fun, but I wanted to play. So I got to New York, you know, but at some point, I hope we can all come together, put styles to the side, put beefs to the side, and be like, yo, how can we sit down with this HBCU organization and help them out and be of assistance to them? Because 3 or 4 programs within 117 schools is embarrassing. You know, we keep looking over here, wanting them to do something, and they got their thing, and over here, it doesn't make sense. So I mean, hopefully, I'm putting it down. Okay. You know, at some point, we all need to get together and rap about what we could do. You know,
so there's the call to action. We want, so the goal, right? Bringing jazz studies into more HBCUs that have the institutional facility to move that forward, nurturing our young people to engage with the music, you know, engage with our heritage musics, and so other things. So I mean, let's maybe there was a question, a kind of a real hardcore kind of logistics question. Let's see, from Sophie Wong. Funding is needed. So how can Sophie, funding, direction of festivals and funding be raised by and for African American creators? So let's just take that question into context. How can we, as the African American creators, the culture bearers of the music, continue to have our festivals, have our jazz studies programs, have our jazz mobiles? We have models. Continue the work of Mr. G.G. Grice, you know, in controlling the business of the music. Any wisdom on that from our panelists?
Yeah, we make the music. If we knew how to do that, I understand that though. I understand the question. We're asking those same questions.
And that is a Black nationalist vision, you know, of the music, and there's nothing wrong with it, because everybody else is controlling their cultural musics, right?
Well, I think that's the goal. I think that's the goal right there.
I mean, I think a national, maybe it's time to consider the loft scene situation and make that a national touring situation, which is what We Up and Re-Up is basically, that's the goal for us. And you say different curating situations, but maybe a national loft situation where we have a network of agreed places that we play, because we are the gig, you know. The thing is, the alcohol is a situation, but we are the gig. You dig? So it's like if we can have agreed situations where we play, which is what Re-Up is about, and we can say we're gonna do this here, and we have to make this connection, then we'll have our spaces, you know. But then that's a whole nother ball game that comes into play after that. But you know,
well, I consider those goals to be unstoppable. If we say we're going to do it and we have hands to the plow, and all of us put our hands to the plow, our minds together with our different experiences and expertise, then it can happen. If Jazz Mobile happen, if these other models happen, then they can happen. We lost Steve. He's gonna come back. Oh, okay, great. Right. Okay, he's back. Thank you, Steve. So
yeah, can I say something to what you guys were just saying? I heard JD before I got cut off.
Go ahead, Steve.
Okay.
And we're going to wrap up in a few moments, everyone.
Yeah, but I want to add to the historical Black college things. But I don't think that that's our only resource. We also have a lot of people in business, Black people in business. We have Black entertainers. We have athletes and things like this. And I think that the same effort that JD was talking about with hitting on the historical Black colleges and things like that could be directed at some of those people too, because we do have a lot of people within the community who have resources. It's just that I believe that what we're talking about here today is invisible to them. I don't think that they can see it. I mean, what Reggie was talking about, I don't think that that's visible to the Oprah Winfreys and all these kind of people. I just don't think they see it. And so I think that we have to bring it, some kind of organized effort to bring it to those people, and not just make it about the schools, but also make it about mentorship and stuff like this. Because if it just goes through the schools, we might reproduce the same kind of issues that we have now. It's just not about school. And so that's all I want to add is I think that the net should be cast bigger and some kind of way. The Jay-Z's and the LeBron James and the Oprahs and all those kind of people should be brought in too, because they also have resources, and it wouldn't be much for them, but it would be a lot for us,
Yes, thank you. Aaliyah Prod has put many resources in the comments. The Ford Foundation. All it takes is time and money. Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, but those are all white people, so I mean that's that's.
Well, hold on now. That's true.
What did you say? What you say?
He said that those funders are controlled by white folks. Ford Foundation. I mean, JD just talking about allies and alliances. We're not going to turn down, the grant money if it's going to be empowering our young people. If that's
I'm not talking about turning down nothing. I'm just talking about reaching out to our own. I'm not talking about turning down.
Okay, I hear you, brother. I hear you. That makes sense. Except we do have to reach out to those who would see things and have the same mind. That's
not going to always be possible, though. I mean, everybody's not going to always think exactly the same.
I know, but I mean, and I guess we may as well have a little inside kind of family discussion. It's like, but it's not possible. It's not really possible to get support from the same purveyors of the issues that we are talking about.
There you go. Now you're talking.
Okay. All right.
See, I said HBCUs because I heard with my own ears a need for this.
Yes.
I heard it myself. I'm not guessing. Like, there's an organization of 100, I think it's 150 music teachers in HBCUs. There is a need for this. And I don't think we're in on those conversations. And I'm not, I'm just saying, if somebody wants us in their home, you're going to go to their crib.
Yeah.
You're going to feel, I'm not saying that's the only way. Yeah, I agree. Like, I mean, I don't think Oprah likes jazz, but if we can get to her and she agrees with the cause, then that's beautiful. We, like I said,
never like jazz. She could just like Black culture.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Okay. But I mean, I'm cool with that. I'm just saying. I said,
I don't think she thinks of it like that, right? Exactly.
I think the HBCUs. Right. I heard it myself that we need help.
Yes,
I heard that.
the HBCU Jazz Initiative. Find them on Facebook. Find them online.
Yes, man, it was really beautiful. I mean, it was like, wow. It was, it was.
Well, there are a lot of sectors in our society that need to be penetrated and proliferated and whatnot. So we can be effective in developing the younger people who are coming up under us. I mean, in every situation that I find myself I teaching, and there are very few people who come through there that look like me. Almost none. There's mostly people from other countries. A lot of, so I mean, we don't have a representation of some. If we're just talking about this music, that is that's diminishing. That's diminishing, exponentially because of the reasons that we're talking about. So we want to talk about just in terms of folks getting in touch with that. We need to get directly in on the grassroots level. Jason and them did something down at the Kenwood Academy in Chicago, actually. But he spent some time there. He went there for over the course of a couple of years. Like, it can't be like, doing the gigs is great, that we do the gigs and that we do what we do. But now it's going to have to be like some long-term engagement.
And community.
Yeah. With these different areas, because there's people doing stuff in every place. We just have to connect with these people so we can grow the network.
Yeah. Exactly.
And so we can get everybody on the same page and be like, okay, well, we're right here. We can connect you. We can connect. So we can. So then there's some power in it. So then we can actually achieve something in a larger sense.
Absolutely, and that's a movement. That's a movement.
I mean, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I mean, I remember us talking about a situation where you do have these big schools, these big universities that have vibrant jazz programs. Why not require them in some kind of way to have outreach programs where they have to go to the neighborhoods? They have these instruments, they have all this, and for you to you have a semester concert arranged for. There is something that is you develop a relationship with the historical aspect and the cultural aspect of this music. So at the very least, we get these people because they don't know anything about the culture or the diasporic historical significance.
Right. What about with the University of Chicago? Because the University of Chicago is sort of this power enclave, surrounded by the South Side Black community, and everything.
Right.
And of course, they're in friction with the community because of gentrification and expanding, just like Columbia up in Harlem and whatever, Yeah. And so I was telling them, you guys, should have a responsibility to reach back out into the culture. Just do what you were talking about, Eric. It's the same kind of thing, And of course, they should do that through Nasheet or through JD or whatever. They should.
It's like also the whole idea of accreditation, like people that are the forebears of this music. And I'm not speaking of to anyone, but I know I didn't have time to go and get what they're saying now are the requirements. And most people I know who made it to a certain level, they're not doing that. Or they weren't afforded the opportunity to do that. But if you go and you apply or for these positions that you could possibly have some influence on, they're saying, oh, well, it's not qualified, or a few of them will give like some credit towards life experience or this kind of thing. Why not make it a point that these universities that are economically viable through their jazz departments, they have to hire somebody. They have to hire musicians of the culture, as like artists in residence.
It's amazing.
Everybody should be right
talking about an affirmative action program for a Black music. But
yeah, this is the reality of it.
You're okay. So, so we have a call here and folks who have hung with us on our live stream, thank you. We always seem to go over, but that's how it is when we get family together to talk. So let's, and let's see. First Lady Cynthia Swan, who was with us last week, has been actively commenting, and she said things like, and she's also an activist in the community as president of the NAACP Women's Initiative, and she said, y'all have to be unified. So unity, what can we come together and agree on? She said we have to. We've mentioned being networked, and she says something that I think brings us home to the issue. She said, if I wasn't 54, I wouldn't think that Black people had anything to do with jazz. And so we must change that. It has to change. And so we're inviting our audience, please give us your contact information at Du Bois Department blackmusicproject.org. We insist.org. Find We Up Re-Up on patreon.com. Join the We Up Re-Up Patreon. Support the efforts of We Up Re-Up to bring jazz into the Black community, into rural communities. And so we invite you. And so we need to hear some final words. Mr. Workman, maybe you can give us a charge on some wisdom and how to sending us out into the battle for Black music and Black identity and bringing the music into our community so that people like First Lady Swan don't have the impression that jazz is a non-Black music. We have to change that. Any last words, Mr. Workman?
Well, you notice what I've been very quiet is, first of all, I'm very, very inspired by hearing what I hear, because all these conversations are exactly what we went through at Warren Smith's studio on 21st Street.
Right.
When we were meeting, and all those the same conversations, the same things that we were talking about then, you're talking about now. And that's what I mean about revolution instead of evolution. First of all, the biggest change we have to deal with is to stop calling them, let the people know, yes, it's African American music. That way you're not leaving anybody out. You're not leaving the experience and the culture out. It's all inclusive. And as far as the funding is concerned, we have to acknowledge the fact that we do have some allies in the National Endowment for the Arts. We do have some allies in today's administration who are dealing with the fact that there's a cultural racist divide in this country. And we have to get into that area and find out how we can stir up that pot and see if we can get something going as far as the communities are concerned. And JD, I would like for you to change playing music and start talking about making music. Because when you start talking about playing, the kids' parents are saying, well, why should I support my kid to play music? They're not talking about that. A lot of our parents at the school where I work are saying, why should I support my kid? Why should I support him? What kind of job is he going to have? What am I encouraging him to do? And I have to go through a long story about the fact that your child might become an alcoholic if he's a lawyer. But you let him do something that he's happy with, and he's going to go further.
I like that. Yes.
It's real, and
that's a good one.
It's broad. It's heavy. It's really heavy, and like I feel that I won't be on the planet for too much longer. God, thank you for letting me last this long. And like you guys are going to take the ball from here and go forward. And I hope that you benefit from everything that we've done in the past and notice what worked and what didn't work. Again, JD, you said a lot of great things, but you're talking about recreating the loft scene. But remember that the businessmen moved out of New York because of rent and left those buildings vacant. And that's why the musicians could have lofts and have space big enough to do concerts. Now the rent, those same lofts has gone up to 3 times the amount of rent.
That's
or
true.
10 times the amount of rent.
Yeah.
So where do the concerts, where do we present the concerts at this time?
Well, the country's bigger than New York. New York is not the only, it's a big country.
Yeah, no. New York is just the microcosm of this big country, and it's the nucleus of where things grow from usually. There's still the churches, there's still the schools, there's still the educational institutions, and so forth. If we can find a way to make our organization strong enough to get into Mid-Atlantic National Endowment, State Council, on the campuses where they would feel like they'd rather have a string orchestra and have 150 people paid instead of 5. People used to ridicule me during the 60s when I used to say, well, we had conversations about welfare. And I used to talk about the fact that the music that we have 5 people who can go out and have 1,000 people in an auditorium, and then you have to have 500 people on stage who get paid to get the same audience. So that's welfare. You're supporting the music that is cost much more than the music that we are going to present to you. I've been ridiculed about saying that, but it's very true. When you think about welfare, you think about the funding of the music and how what kind of audiences they get, and how much money is put behind it. It's beautiful music, and it has to happen. But so we have beautiful music also, and it has to happen. But we have to fight for that reality. And it's an ongoing climb. It's an ongoing climb. And I'm very glad that everyone here is willing to take on that battle.
It's not welfare when it's for their own, Reggie.
What do you say?
It's not welfare when it's for their own.
Exactly. You're right.
I mean, it's like if a black person creates a drug crime, then it's a crime, and if somebody white does it, then it's a medical emergency or problem or whatever.
Yeah, you listen. Listen to the news to get that message for sure.
So that was a word. We have beautiful music too, and it must happen. And so for our live stream audience, please make sure we know you. We can reach you. Join our contact list so we can reach out to you and let you know how we will move forward with these efforts. I want to thank, I'll start from the youngest again. I don't know who's the youngest, but I'll pick you, JD.
I am the youngest.
I was the youngest.
Nasheet, will you raise your hand and say, I'm the youngest, or you want to say
you can be the youngest.
I was just joking. I think I don't even know where I lay. I don't know where I lay on the land. I know I look the youngest, and that's probably what's important.
Wow.
Damn lie.
Okay, so we'll start with you, brother.
I had a really bad joke that I'm not going to say, but all right.
Okay. So Nasheet Waits, thank you so much for your contributions, for everything, the time you poured into making this event series, and the thoughts that you shared today are treasures. Thank you. Eric Revis, thank you so much for the same, for your time and the planning and for being here today. JD Allen, thank you all for your leadership and what we are doing moving forward concerning the movement of and the cause of Black music and bringing it into our communities. And thank you, brother, for being on all three panels this mini marathon we've been on. Thank you very much for your thoughts. Steve Coleman, thank you very much for your hand in planning and helping with bringing this together. And thank you for being on these panels and sharing your insights. And Mr. Workman, I can't thank you enough. It's such a privilege to meet you and to speak with you. And thank you very much for giving us that word, that last word. We have beautiful music too, and it must happen. And so thank you all for joining us. For those
thank you, Maya, for everything that you've done and bringing this program together.
Thank you, Maya. You did a wonderful
really
job.
Thank
you, Maya.
Thank you, UMass Amherst. We really appreciate the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Workman and Steve, Mr. Coleman, Mr. Waits.
Coleman, definitely. And the panel before and the previous panels is I've learned. We've all learned so much, and iron sharpens iron, and we just appreciate the opportunity to sharpen our iron with your iron. And the call is still out there. I really would love for all generations to come together, and put it together. So that's all I'm saying.
So it's gonna happen. Let's move forward with the fall, and then maybe we insist we up in the Boys Black Music Project. We could bring that, and with if they are willing, in collaboration with the HBCU Jazz Initiative. I don't know if y'all are watching, but you've been voluntold, that we're gonna make that happen, so that we can all kind of have a family palaver and plan out these next steps in Black freedom. So thank you all very much for joining us. We appreciate you tuning in. And so we say good evening and good night. And thank you all again to our panelists. Good evening.
Thank you, Maya.
Take care, Maya. Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to Fire Fridays, the Cats Talk Back. Please visit www.duboisdepartmentblackmusicproject.org for more information about these programs. Thank you to our partners, We Insist, and the We Up, Re-Up Online Jazz Festival. We give a special thanks to Antoine Drye, Nasheet Waits, JD Allen, and Eric Revis. A very special thank you to Mr. Reggie Workman, Mr. Charles McPherson, and Mr. Steve Coleman. Thank you to evangelist Cynthia Swan, Dr. Kwasi Ampene, and Dr. Cheryl Keyes. Tremendous thanks to Dr. James Smethurst, Dr. John Bracey, Dr. A. Yemisi Jimo, Dr. Ernie Allen, and the Du Bois Department faculty and staff. Deepest thanks to our technical director, John Webster, Adina and Mark Levin of Collab Fabrication Lab and Innovation Studio, and Kim Smith. Thank you to Professor Salmakia and the UMass Amherst Department of Music for your sponsorship support. We also express our deep appreciation to Chancellor Subaswamy and Provost John McCarthy. A special thank you to Dean Barbara Krautheimer and Associate Dean Joy Bowman from the College of Humanities and Fine Arts for supporting the Du Bois Black Music Project and co-sponsoring these events. The W.E.B. Du Bois Department of Afro-American Studies was founded in 1970 through the Black Power movement. We are a part of the Black revolutionary tradition.